Welcome to Reclaiming Me, a trauma-informed podcast helping women with complex PTSD heal the lasting impact of childhood attachment wounds from parents and caregivers, so you can finally release people-pleasing and perfectionism and learn to trust in relationships, beginning with the one you have with yourself. I'm your host, Cindy Payne, therapist, trauma specialist, and a woman who has walked this path both personally and professionally.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the midweek reframe. And if you haven't gone back and listened to Monday's full-length episode on celebrating small wins without guilt and shame, please do that first, because what I want to talk about today lives right at the heart of that conversation. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the inner critic, specifically where it came from. Because I think for a lot of us, especially those of us with complex trauma histories, the voice that tells us our wins aren't enough, that we aren't enough, that we should keep our heads down and our celebrations small, that voice did not originate with us. That voice started somewhere else long ago, and we inherited it so completely that somewhere along the way, it began to feel like our own. And let me tell you what I mean by that. There is a pattern that I know intimately and that I hear reflected back to me again and again in the work that I do with clients. And it is the pattern of criticism from a parent or family member that became so internalized, so woven into the fabric of how we see ourselves, that we stopped needing them to be in the room for us to actually hear it. And maybe it was a parent who was never quite satisfied, whose response to your wins was to immediately point to what you could have done better, whose love felt conditional on a level of performance that just kept moving out of reach. Or maybe it was a family system where criticism was the primary love language. Not because anything was trying to harm you, but because it was what they knew to do. It was what they had been given. It was what they passed forward without realizing the weight of it. And maybe, if you're like me, you absorbed that voice so completely that you cannot always tell the difference between it and your own. And so here is what I know about how this works on a neurological level. Children's brains are exquisitely attuned to the people that they depend on for their survival. We are wired in our earliest years to take in the messages of our caregivers about who we are and what we are worth, because in the environment that we evolved in, those messages were survival information. What the people around me think of me determines whether I am safe or unsafe. And so we internalize those messages really deeply, really efficiently, and most importantly, without a filter. And when those messages are critical messages, when the voice that we absorb is the one that says, you are not quite enough, or like you need to do better, or don't get too big for yourself, or in my case, don't get too big for your britches. Who do you think you are? Don't celebrate too soon. That voice does not just stay outside of us, but that voice moves in. It sets up a room. And after enough time, it just starts to sound like the most reasonable voice in our heads. It's our realistic one. It's the one that is just trying to keep us from getting hurt. So in a twisted way, it is an inner protector. But it is not our voice. It is a borrowed one. And we do not have to keep running it. So here is the reframe that I want to offer you today. And it's a pretty simple one, but it's a powerful one. The reframe is this: their opinion doesn't define you. It informed you, but it does not define you. And there's a big difference there. What we received in our families of origin informed how we see ourselves. So it shaped the lens, it calibrated the inner critic, it taught us what to expect, but it is not a verdict. It is not the truth about who you are. It is just one person's or maybe one family system's limited, imperfect, and often very wounded perspective on a child that they did not always have the capacity to fully see. And you are not a child anymore. You are someone who is doing the work of learning to see yourself more clearly. And that part of the work is learning to notice when the voice you are hearing is yours and when it is inherited. So here is the practice this week. It is one question, and I want you to bring it into every moment this week when that inner critic shows up. So when you do something well, and the voice immediately says that it wasn't enough, or when something offers feedback and it lands like a verdict on your worth, here's the question: whose voice is this? It's not an accusation. It's not as a way of reopening old wounds or assigning blame. It's just an honest inquiry. Really, whose voice is this? Is it mine? Or is it something that I learned? Or something that I borrowed? Or maybe it was something that was handed to me by someone who was themselves carrying something that they had never put down. And if the answer is that it is borrowed, if you can trace it back to a person or a place or an experience that shaped it, then you get to make a choice. Not to silence it necessarily, not to pretend that it isn't there, but to choose in this moment whether you want to keep it running. Because you are also allowed to put borrowed things down. You are also allowed to say, this voice was not mine to begin with, and I am choosing slowly and imperfectly to find my own. So here again is what I want you to carry into your week. Whose voice is the criticism that I'm hearing right now? And is it actually mine? So just notice. You don't have to have it all figured out this week. You just have to start asking the question. The inner critic that lives in you has been there a long time. It learned its lines from someone who had their own pain, their own history, their own borrowed voices, and none of that makes what it says about you true. You get to decide what is true, slowly and with a lot of practice, and with a lot more compassion for yourself than the voice has ever offered to you. So try it out, practice with it, and let me know how it goes. And I will see you all next week for another new full-length episode. In the meantime, take really, really good care of yourselves. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope you leave feeling a little lighter, a little more grounded, and a little closer to trusting yourself and your inner experience. If this episode resonated with you, please follow or subscribe so future conversations can meet you when they're needed. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, consider sharing this episode with them. That's one of the ways this work reaches the people who need it the most. You can find me on Instagram at Cindy Payne Rooted, and you can also visit me at cindypayne.com, where you'll find all episode links, blog posts, practice updates, and a free people-pleasing style quiz designed to help you notice your patterns with more compassion. And remember, every small step towards healing, self-trust, and presence matters. You are worthy of this journey. Thanks, everyone.